And welcome back. Thank you for staying tuned. Listen, like I told you at the beginning of the show, I have a special guest and probably one of my favorite people in state government because of how he takes care of our money. And you know, as a person who is newly retired from state government, our money is important. And for those, really, those our dollars are important. I know a lot of people do not know what a comptroller does, and I believe, had him on the show before. We talked about comptroller. At least we've had a comptroller on where we've talked about it. And I think this is so important. You know, people know the governor. That's great. You should know who the governor is. People know who your senator is and who your assembly person is. But this person holds and really guides your money. And that's why we have him on. And I'm so glad to have the Honorable Tom DiNapoli. Thank you for being with us.
I am honored to be with Bishop Pritchett. It's great to be back with you and having. I think the last time we did it. I did it by phone. I think.
Yeah,
I phoned
maybe we
in.
did
Yeah.
on Zoom.
Yeah.
Wow, it's
It was
been that
Zoom.
while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
That's been a while.
Been
And now we
overdue.
got you face to face, and we've been really blessed here on Power to the People to have the governor, to have Tish James, and now so I've had the top 3 people now in government in this room, and so I'm thrilled about it. And you're just doing the work. Can you tell the people, in layman's terms, what the comptroller does?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked because you're absolutely right. Most folks know the job is something to do with money, but not 100% sure. So we serve, my team and I, were the chief fiscal officer for the state of New York. So it means we oversee how the money's being spent. We don't set the state budget, right? The governor and the legislature do that. But after they make that decision, and they just had a long process to get that
Very
done
long,
this year,
yes.
we make sure the money goes out the door the way they intended. So we do that in terms of when we are providing grants to local governments, nonprofits that may get grants, when we approve the contracts that vendors who are doing business with the state, we make sure that all the appropriate rules and regulations and policy are being followed appropriately. Then what we also do are audits, right? That's where we have a team of auditors. They're trained as auditors. Some of them are CPAs. They look at the numbers, but they also look at the performance of different programs. So that's another important way that we provide accountability and transparency. That's why we say our office is the Office of Accountability and Transparency. Then we try to provide guidance, not just on state issues, but on local issues as well.
I've seen recently you
Well,
provided guidance on Buffalo's.
I was going to say that. Yeah,
budget.
as you well know, Buffalo's had some big budget issues. And the new mayor, Sean Ryan, reached out to me and said, hey, can you take a look at our numbers and make sure we have the right number in terms of what the deficit is to help guide us? So we were happy to do that. And we do that in a collaborative way, right? We're not there to, we do have an oversight role, and we have to do an audit now and then, and we may call people out. But we want to help local. If you were in local government.
But I didn't know. I'll be very honest. As the council president, I never thought of, and I commend the mayor for reaching out to the state comptroller.
Yeah.
I never thought that was a part of the role, that you would come. People think of especially elected officials. If the comptroller is coming,
not good.
oh boy, they're coming to look at our books and they're going to.
I always say that audit role, that accountability role, is very important. But in that same division that does auditing on the local government side and school districts, they also have a team that does research reports and provides training to municipal officials. So we take very seriously both roles. We'd rather provide the guidance so there aren't any bad findings in an audit. That assistance, and to be honest with you, in recent years, we've seen more municipalities in fiscal trouble. Part of that is, inflation hits everybody.
Buffalo.
It's not just Buffalo, not at all. And also, we went through the COVID years where a lot of money came in from Washington. Now we're in the Trump years, and they're taking money back from us. It's hurting the state. We could talk about that if you want, the impact, especially
talk about
on
whatever you want
Medicaid and so on.
Yes.
But that also trickles down to the local governments as well being impacted. So we're seeing, we have what we call our early warning system, fiscal stress monitoring. We're seeing more and more local governments score higher, not in a good way, on facing fiscal stress. So Buffalo is not alone. But Buffalo is an important community, very important city in our state. So we want to work with the mayor to turn things around for the people here.
So for those who did not see your report or your suggestions concerning Buffalo, What were they? What was the main
Well, I mean,
focus?
the first thing we want to do is validate the deficit number, right?
Mhm.
So 103 million was pretty much in line with what
Well,
the
at one
mayor
point, it
indicated.
was one person was saying
That
this and
well,
somebody else was saying this,
yeah,
and we were all
yeah.
confused.
Politics happens
Your
sometimes,
policy.
right? I know you've never seen it in your
Yeah,
career.
right.
So we wanted to give some validity to that because we are an
Yeah.
independent entity. The main set of recommendations really was to make sure that the spending decisions that are being made to balance this year's budget
Mhm.
not only address the current challenge, but really it's the out years.
Mhm.
And this is a problem for the state as well, Bishop, is that we get through a certain budget year, but we always start off with a hole the next year. And the reality for Buffalo is that they're going to be in a tough situation for a few years to come.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the choices of how much money to spend where,
Mhm.
or if there's going to be any discussion of tax increases, that's going to be up to the council and the mayor to work out. That's not for us to tell anybody what the priorities should be. What we will continue to do is keep an eye on the bigger picture. How are your decisions impacting on short-term and long-term budget balance? So there's more work to do, and some hard choices probably going to have to be made here in Buffalo.
So here's a question, especially in our federal climate.
Yeah.
You talk about being an independent, your office independent role. However, you're an elected official.
Yeah.
How do you balance being an elected official, usually endorsed by a party, and then having to go in and audit sometimes the same leaders who supported you?
They told me you weren't going to ask me tough questions. It's an especially challenging issue for the controller. It really is because the office really is set up to be the least partisan of all the offices.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right, because we are expected to call the shots as we see them. We call the balls and strikes. We're not deciding. We're like the umpire.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to choose teams. But you're right. It is an elected office. I run, as a Democrat, so it is a balancing act. I would say this. First of all, our staff, with rare exception, is civil service. And I always say to folks, like, so if we do an audit, and let's say it's a Republican government, they say, well, you're criticizing us because you're a Democrat. Or we're doing a Democratic government and it's critical, and they say, well, you don't like our side of the party. I always have to say the auditors are professional people. They were hired through civil service. I don't know if they're Republicans or Democrats. I have no idea. And,
Wow.
and if
Good
you
point.
and if you've ever worked with an auditor, you can't tell an auditor
Yeah,
what
well,
to do. Believe me, you can't
Auditors
tell an
are
auditor.
a whole bunch different.
And
Yes,
they will tell you.
Yes.
They will tell you. I was here before you were
Yep,
here, and
yep.
I'll be here after you're gone. And they're very independent, and that's why I've always backed up their work, because they do it with credibility, and they don't compromise anything. But are there situations where we have to call out a government where I have friends? Yeah, it happens.
Yeah,
It
and I've
does
seen you
happen.
do it. So
But-
I asked the question, but
yeah,
I kind of
no, it's
already
very
knew the
important.
answer.
I'll tell you this little anecdote. A previous governor, not the current governor, I'll let you guess which one it was, didn't like one of our audits on economic development. And he said to the press, well, that audit is the controller's opinion. He had his opinion, and he told his auditors to write the audit according to his opinion. And I remember the press came to me and said, was that true? I said, have you ever met one of my auditors? You think I could tell them a darn thing? And I said, no. And I backed them up because
Yeah.
of their professional work. But you're asking an important question, because it is a balancing act. Because, look, I have opinions, right?
Absolutely.
I was, as you know, in the legislature for 20 years.
Yep.
That's how I got to know Crystal Peoples-Stokes,
Yep.
first person who brought me to your church
Yes,
years ago.
yes.
And so I've had opinions on a lot of issues, but I've had to kind of park at the door some of those opinions. And some people want me to take a position on every single issue, every bill that's pending. And I
Right.
got to say, I'm not a legislator anymore. I have to respect the
Wow.
role of the governor and the assembly members and the senators. But I have my own unique role and responsibility, and I guard that independence. People say, to be controlled, do you have to be a CPA? Do you have to know about investment? We'll talk about the pension fund
I
at one
promise
point,
you
right?
I was going to ask you that.
Gotta
Right.
get to that, right?
Right.
Are you a trained auditor? You go down the long list of responsibilities. No, the key qualification is independence, and then being a manager to hire the experts to do all those important
So
functions.
you're not the one that's going to do the audits, and you're sending out professionals
Right.
who are civil service workers, for the most part,
Yes.
your office
Yeah.
of civil service,
Yeah.
and they do the audits. Because
Yeah.
what I've seen in these years, how long have you been controller now?
My 19th year. Yeah.
That blows my mind.
It blows mine too.
19 years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in 19 years, I've watched you handle this office, and I've seen you at different events, and I've seen you talk to anybody who talked to you. I've noticed that. It wasn't as if you were so guarded that you weren't talking to this person because they were on the other side of the aisle. It was like everybody were coming up to you, taking pictures and talking to you. How did you master that in 19 years?
Oh, maybe it started before that. First of all, I'm like you. I like people a lot.
Mhm.
My parents were good, hardworking people, and they taught me very simple values. That they were good Republicans.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I've never been one to say because you're in a different party,
That's right.
I'm going to think less of you.
That's right.
As you know, you've gotten to know all the political players. There are good people on our side and not so good people on our
Yep.
side. There are good people on the other side as
Yep.
well, and some not so good people. Too often in our politics today, we demonize people based on the label.
Absolutely.
And I think part of it is, unfortunately, if I could say it, the fellow in the White House doesn't help.
Mhm.
And that polarization, I think, we say tone at the top matters when you're running an organization, whether it's a church or a corporation or a government office. The tone at the top is not good right now in the United States of America. We're always looking, who's the other, who's the enemy. And that's not how I was brought up. That's not how I've ever approached my politics. And even just a little bit of history to remind you and your listeners. I became controller because my predecessor had to resign. He got into trouble. And the legislature, sitting as a unicameral body, Senate Assembly members had to choose a replacement. And it was a very contentious process. And I only got to this position because Republicans as well as Democrats
Wow.
supported me.
Wow.
And I've never forgotten that. And I've said, I've got to be there to serve all the people of the state, regardless of what their political point of view is. And yeah, I am a Democrat. I don't compromise on that. And there are times for politics, right? Especially at election time. But when it comes to the governing work, I'm the controller and I'm independent and I will look out for everybody's interests.
So when I was voted in as council president, there was a divide on the council. And the people who encouraged me to run were people who were actually on the other side of the aisle. And all the way through, so I appreciate what you just said.
Yeah.
My 10 years as the Common Council president, it was, I got to take care of everybody.
Well, and you did a great job.
I
You're a
enjoyed
great
it.
leader. I was always hoping you were going to move up. You never wanted to. But it's how you approach being bishop
Yeah.
here, at True Bethel. You don't know what people, Republicans or Democrats,
Yep.
or
And don't
independents,
care.
whatever.
And
It don't
don't
matter.
care
When they
a
walk in
little
the
bit.
door of the church or they come to you for guidance or
right.
for inspiration, it doesn't matter. You meet them where they are. And I've always tried to be that way, and it's harder to do these days. Though people ask me all the time, you're running again. You've run a few times. It's still important. That's why I still want to be.
Seems like
in
you
this.
still like it.
I love it. The politics is not as much fun though. I'll be honest
Boy,
with
we're
you.
not cut from the same cloth. Right.
No,
The
'cause
politics they can have.
They can
The
keep
job,
it. They can keep
I
it.
love. Yes.
I love
yes.
the service part.
Yes.
The other part, look, I still love meeting people,
Yep.
but people are upset about so many things. A lot of anger. They don't know where to place the anger.
Yeah.
That's and people are very discouraged.
Yeah.
They're very discouraged. So to try to motivate people to still be positive, I always try to be positive. I would, if I wasn't an optimist, I wouldn't keep doing this.
yeah.
I wouldn't. I don't know that you would keep doing what you're doing if you didn't believe that there is a greater plan out there. Things are going to get better. We may not understand what we're going through, but we'll get to a better place. I believe that, but it's a lot harder to convince people of that these days. It really is.
So we're going to talk in a few minutes about the big money that you
Yeah.
invest. But let me tell you. So I get 2 checks from you. One check I get is a retirement check. The other check that I've gotten 2 checks in the last maybe year, and that's from funds
Unclaimed
that
funds.
the state of New York is
Yeah.
holding.
Yeah.
And that I forgot about.
That's
I
right.
think it was one was from a deposit from National Grid. Or
Yep.
something. So you have been pushing this
all the
for a
time.
while. And so that folk understand there's money in the state
Yes.
that sometimes comes from deposits that different companies cannot keep.
Old bank
Old
accounts,
bank accounts, and
gift
you
cards
get
that
them.
weren't cashed.
How much money do you have in that account? About
So here's where it gets a little complicated. I'm glad you asked the question. So if you have an old bank account, a security deposit was never cashed, somebody might have left you money in a will, that somebody didn't get. Often what happens is people have moved. We're a very mobile society. So the financial institution is supposed to try to find you. And if they can't, under the law, after a certain period of time, the money is declared dormant, turned over to the state for safekeeping. We hold it until we find the person, the rightful owner, or they find us. So these accounts never expire. Never expire in perpetuity. They go back to the 1940s.
you have money from the 1940s.
Yes, but if you added up the value of all the accounts, 50 some odd million accounts, it's about now close to $21 billion. But here's where it gets complicated.
Okay.
I'm not sitting on a treasure chest of $21 billion, right? So the accounts are worth that, and the accounts never expire. But every year, at the end of the year, we pay out as much as we can. We're paying out now $2 million a day, and we're trying to pay out even more because we do all kinds of community events. And
I know. That's how I found out.
And we have a new process now where accounts 5,000 or less will actually contact you and send you the money without you coming to us first. But what happens at the end of the year, we do the payout, we leave some money in reserve, and then the legislature and the governor use the excess to help with the state budget. So sometimes people say, why are you sitting on $20 billion? Well, we're not. Because, look, it goes back to the 1940s. In the name of people or businesses or congregations that no longer exist, some of the accounts have incomplete information. We can never track it back. So so sometimes when people hear that number, they say, oh, my God, what are you doing with that money? The money's been put to good use to pay for other programs. But we always have more than enough in reserve to pay out. And technically, if everybody came out of the woodwork, Bishop, we'd have to pay that $21 billion.
You have to find it somewhere.
We'd have to find it, yeah.
So you is that money invested?
Well, it's part of the state's short-term cash pool.
Okay.
So it's we want to keep it liquid because we want to turn it out as quickly as we can. So it's not invested for the long term because at the end of the year, as I said, the legislature and the governor sweep it. So it's not really, we don't hold it. It's not like the pension fund where we're holding that money.
You just gave the segue.
It's a good segue, right?
Talk to us about pension fund and that what you do with the pension fund during the year.
Yeah.
Besides pay it out.
Yeah. So I'm very proud of the fact that we have the best funded of all the big state pension plans in the country. So
in the country.
Okay. We're $295 billion. We have 1.3 million New Yorkers who are part of the pension plan, active public employees, retirees, and beneficiaries. Our long-term investment goal is 5.9%. We do it on the state fiscal year. So as of March 31st, we had an 11.94% return, double what we had projected. So I'm very proud to say we're more than meeting our numbers. So that retirement security, which is guaranteed under the Constitution, we actually have the money to pay for it. And we fund the pension in a couple of ways. First of all, employees contribute, right? That's one way. Secondly, employers, City of Buffalo, State of New York, they contribute. But most of the pension benefit is paid for on investment return. So about 75% of the money is what we earn on our investments. So that's why when we do as well as we do, it helps to keep the cost down for the employers. And, this year, there was a big debate about Tier 6. Tier 6, you heard that, right?
Yes.
A lot of pressure on the legislature and the governor because 2/3 of our employees now are in Tier 6. The benefits aren't as good as the earlier tiers. So the legislature and the governor did do some enhancement, and I said it was appropriate to talk about it because we've had some issues with recruitment and tension and fairness, and I felt the initial Tier 6 proposal went too far anyway, years ago.
It was horrible, yes.
It wasn't good.
Yes.
So unions didn't get everything they asked
Right.
for. Always a compromise because you don't want to kill the goose that's laying the
Right,
golden
right,
egg. You don't
right,
want to go too
right.
far. But we have more than enough money to cover that. And so that's what we balance. We want to make sure, and we don't set the benefit level. That's done by the legislature and the governor. But we make sure, the money's there. But, what we also try to do is invest more money in New York State. We have a number of programs for small business lending, what we call our in-state investment program. We've got about $2.7 billion now invested in startups in New York. We also, when I first became controller, Crystal People-Stokes, among others, came to me and said, the reputation of the pension fund is that's a closed shop. And especially for diverse managers, they're not part of the old boy network. They haven't had opportunities. So we set up from the very beginning a very ambitious MWBE and emerging manager program. And I'm very proud to say we now have $34 billion under management by diverse firms, Black, Hispanic, Asian, Native American. We have the most aggressive program to make sure that our diversity goals include investment management. And I must tell you, it works because we get good returns. This is not something we're doing just because it sounds good. And we hold our diverse managers to the same standards as anybody else. But what we found, especially with what we call the emerging managers, which tend to be newer firms and very often diverse firms, they're hungry. They're new to the marketplace. They want to prove themselves.
So these are the people who invest the money
On our behalf.
on behalf of the state.
So we have $295 billion. We have a diversified portfolio. The biggest part of the portfolio is in stocks that people are familiar with. And most of that we manage passively in-house. And then we have a lot of money in fixed income, treasuries, also managed in-house. But even with fixed income, we do have brokers that we work with. And again, we look for diverse brokers there. And then the other part of the portfolio where we really have had great success with diverse managers are in the private markets. Because you don't want to have all your money in one basket. You don't want to have all your money in the stock market. So because we manage that in-house at low cost, we do investments in private equity, in real estate, in infrastructure.
Okay, you got to break this down. And I'm going to tell you why. I've been in government a long time.
Yeah.
If anybody had asked me where you invest, I would think most of it's just stock market. When you talk about real estate, what do you mean? Like,
so that's where
landlord, the state of New York is the landlord, or what?
No. So what we would do, we would invest through a manager in a fund, and the fund, like in real estate, some funds are focused on office, some are focused on retail, some are focused on housing, but that's where we work with managers that use our money. Now, when they're investing for us, they charge a fee, but because we have low fee for the biggest parts of the portfolio, which are the public equity, the stocks, and the fixed income, we can afford. So our fees, some people say, oh, you're paying too much in fees. We pay about $1 billion in fees on a close to $300 billion fund. That is
for people to invest.
People to invest. So we'll work with an investment team. They'll do real estate, private equity, which could be, they take an ownership stake in a company, or if it's venture capital, they're starting up a company. Infrastructure, a lot of that relates to the energy transition, right? Solar, wind, so on. We have a lot of investments in that area, but that's where we give people an allocation of our money. They charge us a fee, and we expect them in the private markets to get a good return, number one. But number two, we want it not to be correlated or connected to what's happening in the stock market. Because, when the stock market is doing well, everybody says, why don't you have more money in stocks?
Right.
And when the stock market goes down, everybody says, why do you have so much money in stocks? The stock market is more volatile. When you're in the private market, you put the money in, and you don't get the money out for another 7 years, 10 years, depending on the investments. So that's good for a pension fund because we're in it for the long haul. We have more than enough money for your pension, for the pension of somebody working today for the state or for the city of Buffalo. It's the person starting work tomorrow that we are investing for their retirement 25, 30 years from now. People sometimes don't realize the pension fund, it's different than, let's say, how we handle insurance, health insurance, which is also very important. But a pension fund, you're pre-funding that obligation. So when we're investing, it's because we want to make sure the money's going to be there the 25, 30 years from now when the person's retiring. And that's why we're very rigorous to make sure we're getting a good return, that we're conservative. 5.9 investment goal, I mentioned, a very conservative number compared to other public pension plans. But that's why we're 95% funded, because we have a smart investment strategy. We have a conservative strategy. The money is there. We're well funded. That, people say, oh, yeah, the numbers are so big. I always say, don't worry about the numbers. It's how well funded, how much assets do we have versus liabilities. And that's what's right. I try to say to the staff all the time, My mom was a civil service worker. She was a clerk for Nassau County. And I remember, growing up, she would get the statement from the controller's office. You remember that? Said, how many, you open it up at the kitchen table, how many years do I have? What will my pension be? And I remember that gave her a great sense of security about what her golden years would be. Now, unfortunately, my mother died while she was still working. She did not get to enjoy her pension, her retirement. But I always say to our team, especially those doing the investing, don't just talk to me about those big numbers. You have to realize there are men and women and families who are depending on what we do and making sure that money is going to be there for them. Let's be smart about how we're investing. It's people like my mother. This is their security. You know so many people, I'm sure, in your congregation, in the community, they don't have a pension. A lot of people in the private sector, pensions are like a dinosaur now. I think of my father. He did get to live into his 90s. He worked for, remember the old days when we had one phone company, Ma Bell, right?
My mother worked for
Oh, there you go. Okay. I did too. I did too before I was in the assembly.
Yeah.
And he had close to 40 years. He was a lineman, a cable splicer for most of that time. They still had a defined benefit pension. And so when he retired, it wasn't a big pension, but it was there every month.
Yep.
He had personal savings. He was a child of the Depression, so he was a very frugal man. And he had Social Security, thank you, Franklin Roosevelt of that time. That three-legged stool gave him security in his golden years. He lived in the house until the day he died that he built after he came back from World War II.
That's what
and
they
built
did
a family.
back
My mother.
then.
It's a different way. So I always say to folks, the fact that our public employees have this benefit, we have to make sure we're protecting it and that it's going to be there. And I know sometimes people say, well, I don't have one of those pensions. Why do those public employees have it? But that's the choice you make when you go into civil service. Usually you don't make as much money.
Absolutely.
Right? But the difference is if you put in the time, that's the other thing. People think, oh, you go work for the city of Buffalo in 5 years, you're going to get a big pension. No. No. You got to be there 25, 30 years, then you're going to get a decent pension. So there's a little bit of, try to educate people as to what the reality is. The average police and fire pensions are higher for obvious reasons. They get paid more and different
Dangerous
benefit
jobs.
structure. Yeah,
Yes.
dangerous jobs. The average pension now across the state for people, which is over 90% of our employee base in the employees' retirement system, is about $28,000. But that money makes the difference between continuing to live in New York versus moving to a lower cost state. So I take that responsibility very, very seriously.
Has there ever been a time, either during your time or in other times, where that pension fund was in trouble?
I won't say in trouble, but I will say shortly after I became controller, we had a little incident called the global financial crisis. We went from about 150 billion down to 109 billion in 1 year, about 25% value drop. I had just become
Was
controller.
that because of the investments?
It was because the global financial, the whole world was melting down back then. People forget, that was like 08, 09. Everything went down, and we were caught up in that like everybody else. And we had to be smart about building it all back, and we raised the contribution rates. The city of Buffalo had to pay a lot more. But then when we started making the money back, and we made it back pretty quickly, we were able to moderate, the rates. They're not down to as low as they were years ago. Prior to my tenure, the last time we had something that was a challenge was when the dot-com bubble burst and 9/11 happened. Similar dynamic. The world was upside down. And then COVID also. It was a shorter duration than those other disruptions, but also we had some short-term losses then. Again, I always say we want to keep the plan well-funded. So when these incidents, and they will, it seems like every 10 years something happens.
Something comes up,
if we're well-funded, then we can bounce back. The problem in other states that have poorly funded pensions is that they underfund the pensions when the times are good. And they say, we'll be fine, and when the bad time, we'll make it. No, if you don't keep your plan well-funded, it's going to catch up with you. And we've had some states, Pennsylvania, for example, they moved off of a purely defined benefit pension because they could never make up for it.
Really?
Illinois, New Jersey, poorly funded pensions, and it catches up with you. It hurts the finances for the entire state. So that's why, some people say, oh, why do you have the plan so well funded? You don't have to fund it that well. Yes, I do. Yeah, keep retirement security and to keep the finances strong, because you don't know what's around the corner. Look what's happening this year. You see all the ups and downs, the war in Iran and, all this, especially with this administration. You don't know what's around the corner.
I have last two questions. Does that affect your work, for instance, the war in Iran,
Yeah.
world events, does that in any way affect your work?
I mean, what we try to do in managing the pension fund is we set up an asset allocation. I mentioned the different assets earlier, and then we decide how much to put in each part of the portfolio, each bucket. And we do a very deep analysis every 5 years. And then we stick to it. We let it ride. But yeah, when those kind of geopolitical events happen, it is disruptive. But keep in mind, the fund is valued only once a year. This is the same for any public pension fund.
Okay.
So I always say March 31st.
Okay.
It almost doesn't matter any other day. What matters on March 31st. So we have confidence in our long-term strategy. So when there are ups and downs, right? Even recently in this month of June, we've seen big losses and big gains. We're not day traders. We're not moving money around.
I was going to ask you, do you sit around like biting your nails like, oh my gosh, we just lost $500 million over in this fund?
Bishop, the last week of March every year, I ask for all of the bishops and all of the rabbis and all the imams to pray for me, because that March 31st number, that's the big number. So I mentioned the global financial crisis. The low point of the market that year was mid-March. So that's one reason why we went down so much. So no, what's happening day to day in the middle of the year, it really doesn't bother me, because, again, I have confidence that we're going to be good for the long term. But the end of March, like last year, Trump had his Liberation Day announcement. Yeah. We didn't do as well last year as I would have hoped. So, but we're too big. If when you're as big as we are, by the time you move that big ship, things are going to change again. Yeah. So that's why you have to have confidence in how you've laid out your strategy. Same thing with people's personal finances.
Yeah.
Have your strategy. Have a diversified. Have a little bit of money here, a little bit of money in the stock market, a little bit in your savings account. Don't put it all in one basket. That's why a lot of people do mutual funds.
You teaching now?
Yeah. No, but and then have confidence. Don't. When the market goes down, retirees call, is my pension going to be okay? And we say, pension's going to be fine.
You're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. So let me personalize this interview before we end. Tell me average day, what does it look like in the life of the state comptroller of one of the best investing funds in the United States of America? What does a day look like?
I wish I could say this is an average day. Well, the days,
what time you get up in the morning?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm more a night person, but the rest of the world don't operate that way.
I hate early morning meetings.
I could work till 3, 4 in the morning and sleep till noon, but I'm not allowed to do that.
Right.
So I'm usually up, 6:30-ish, depending on the day.
Okay.
A little bit more, a little bit later, and it depends where I'm working. So our main office is in Albany.
Okay.
My home is on Long Island, though, right? So if I'm in Albany, more typically the day would be meeting with staff, because most of the team is up there, especially the management level. So most of my time when I'm in Albany is in internal meetings. When I'm downstate, or if I'm traveling, like here we are in Buffalo today, more of the activity is around events outside of the office and meeting with people, speaking at community events. So it depends kind of where I am. And, of course, this year being a political year, there are a whole other set of events that you have to go to. So it's hard to say this is a typical day, but I would say, a lot of it's internal meetings. Believe it or not, people sometimes think, because the pension fund is so big, that every day I'm spending a lot of time on that. The reality is we have a very professional team that manages that. We have those other advisors we work with, the consultants. So, yeah, I'm always looking at what's going on. And we have this week we had a meeting of our investment advisory committee, because we have other professionals that guide us. We have an independent group that gives us investment guidance. We have a real estate committee. So those are some of the internal meetings that go on a regular basis that I participate in. But then I'm getting briefed on the audits that are happening. I'm getting briefed on, every month we do a report, we call it cash report. How much money is the state taking in a tax revenue? How much money are we spending? Then sometimes there are press events if we're, having an announcement on something. So it's hard to say that there's a typical
every day is different.
Every day, which, that's part of what I like about the job.
Okay.
And same thing, I'm sure for you. You don't know what phone call you're going to get. You don't know what kind of crisis you're going to have to deal with, or a happy occasion, or a sad occasion, a funeral. You don't know. You're driven by what's happening. And then, of course, as you can remember when you were a public official, you don't know when the press is going to call you because they want to grab you for this interview show, or I need you to be on the, and you want to be as accessible as possible. but I always try to say, I still have a day job. I can't.
I had to learn that.
I can't
Yeah.
just. I can't delegate everything
Right.
because the buck does stop at my desk.
Yes.
And I do have to. There's certain things that only I can do. But the key thing is, you have to hire a good team around you, and not be afraid to hire people smarter than you.
Yeah.
I learned that a long time ago.
Amen.
And not be afraid to hire people going to say, you know what, Tom, there's a better way to do it.
Yeah.
And listen, be a good listener. Now, every now and then I may say, no,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the controller, I'm not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the rare times when I overrule staff, I'm not saying it to brag, I'm usually right, but I don't do that too often. Because if I didn't trust their judgment, they shouldn't be working for me. Right?
So I know there's an election coming up.
Yeah, so I've heard.
And I'm hearing in some areas your name is, it's only a controller that's there. Well, it's just a controller's choice.
Yeah.
Are you excited? And before you answer that, let me give a disclaimer that the show is not endorsed. It does not endorse any candidates, and every candidate is welcome to be on this show. With that being said, are you excited?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm excited. When you get out there, you remember what it's like when you have to ask people for support. It gets your juices flowing again. You get to learn a lot too. People are very free with their opinions. But I'm hopeful that my contract will be renewed. I'm the only statewide primary, which is a little bit of an unusual situation.
Isn't it?
So I very much reminding everybody, the two most troubling things I hear as recently as yesterday is somebody said, oh, there's a primary? I didn't know there's a primary. What do you mean? The primary's coming right up. You better know. Or the second thing is, oh, everybody likes you. Got nothing to worry about. No.
No, don't do that. I understand. I don't need you to stay home.
Every vote's got to be counted. And I certainly do hope that everybody does, however they're going to vote for. And again, at the end of the day, I do believe our political process can help to make things better. It's hard to have that optimism given what's going on, but how we're going to get out of this time that we're in is putting better people into office. Sometimes those are new people. Sometimes those are they're people like me who've been around for a bit, who still have some wisdom and some guidance to offer. I'm really hopeful that 2026 will be a year that the voters will make some better choices perhaps than they made in some other years. They made the right choice on controller. I hope they will continue. But I really want to, if I could be partisan from it, I think we need a new House of Representatives. I want to see Hakeem Jeffries be our speaker. Be very important to New York. These cuts on health care, particularly Medicaid program, besides putting our state's finances in jeopardy, going to be hurting people. We've got 400,000 people losing health insurance coverage. Is it going to mean they're not going to get health care, medical care? Well, no, they will, but they'll go to the hospital as their emergency room, as their doctor's office.
Absolutely.
And we'll have to pay for it anyway with the charity pools.
Absolutely.
So what the federal government is taking, we're going to have to make up for that anyway. But
It's
people are going to
gotta
get
be
hurt
paid.
in the meantime.
Exactly.
Cuts to SNAP, nutrition programs,
Yes.
cuts to education, short-sighted, mean. There's a meanness coming out of Washington. And we in New York, thankful for Governor Hochul, for Tish James, who's always fighting back, helping us get some of that money unfrozen that they try to freeze. And now Adrian Adams hopefully will be joining us as Lieutenant Governor. That's going to be a good team to navigate us through this challenging time. It's one of the reasons why I want to run again. We have to navigate this changed relationship between Washington and the states, and particularly a state like New York that's been hurt so much, because we got to get to a better place. And until that better place happens, you need, the kind of steady hand and proven leadership that can help us get through this time.
The Comptroller of the State of New York, it has been our pleasure, and thank you for stopping by.
It's great.
Power to
Our
the
conversation
people.
went so fast. I have to come back again.
We'll be right back. Clear?